Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is the next video in the virtual machine automation with the computer vision. In this series, we are looking at how actually I can automate a remote desktop or a virtual machine with a technology which is called the UiPath computer vision. This is the agenda for this video. We are going to have a quick recap of the CV scope and the caching strategy. We have already covered this in the previous video, so we would be just having a quick recap. The major focus of this video would be that how do I get the data out of the Citrix machine or out of the remote machine, which means that we would be looking at how do I get the text data, and in case I have a tabular data which is inside the virtual machine, how can I get that? So let's get started. So the first thing is the CV screen scope. Whenever I have to do any automation with the UiPath computer vision, the first activity which I would require is the CV screen scope. This would initialize the computer vision network for me and it will provide a container for the activities. This CV screen scope has three properties: the URL, the server, and the API key. In the first video, we have already covered that what is its importance, how do we get the URL, what is the API key, and all of this. In case you are looking this video for the first time, I request you to go and watch the first video where we are configuring the CV screen scope. The link of the video is available in the description. In the second video, we have seen there is something in the new CV activities pack from 20.10, which is known as the new caching strategy, which means that all the screen inside the virtual machine are cached inside a single CV screen scope. No matter how many activities or the screen the computer vision interact with, there would be a single CV screen scope activity with all the screen cached. Because of this reason, UiPath has deprecated the CV refresh activity. We have covered this in detail in the previous video. So in case you want to have a look into it, please find the link in the description. Now, coming to this one, today the first activity which we are going to discuss is the get text output, which means that if I want to extract some data out of the Citrix VDI, how can I do that, right? Before going to the presentation, let us first understand what is the use case and try to do the same in the UiPath Studio. I am back in my UiPath Studio. I'll go here and I create a new sequence. I'll call this sequence as output of CV. I hit create. This is the remote desktop which we are using 161202. As you can see, this is an RDP. And let's say we want to extract some of the data out of the VDI. Now it can be from a browser, it can be from a notepad or anywhere, right? So for example, let us say that we want to extract the text which is coming on this news. So I have just clicked somewhere. So let's say I have an automation requirement where I want to read this text, whatever is coming on the screen, right? So let me pull up it a little bit like this. I'll just adjust it so that we are able to see. Okay. So for example, I have a requirement where I want to extract this data from the remote VDI. As of now, this is a desktop, but it can be anything, right? To get the data out of the remote desktop using the CV, the first activity which we require is the CV screen scope, right? This we have already covered in the first video, that what is the importance and how do I get it, right? If you notice, I already have the URL and the API key with me. So in case you haven't already have this, you can watch the first video and you can get the API key and the URL for yourself. Okay. Now the next, we need to indicate on the screen that which screen we want to automate, right? So if I go to my VDI, you would notice that this is the page where I want to extract the text. Okay. So I simply go here and I say indicate on the screen and I point it to this window, which is the remote desktop, like this. Okay. If you notice, now UiPath is telling me that I have identified this thing, right? And you could notice that all the elements are now being identified, right? What is the next thing? The next thing is we want to get the text, right? So if I simply write here get text, Inside the computer vision, you would see that there is an activity which says CV get text, right? Drag and drop the CV text inside the CV screen scope, which means that we have to tell UiPath that I want to get the text inside this scope only. Okay. Now simply click on indicate on scope, and I have to now simply select the text which I want to get, right? We can do it like this. But if you see here, when I am moving the mouse, it is selecting all the items one by one, right? But my requirement is, let's say I want to get this complete text. So you can use the mouse and you can actually click a rectangle like this. That's it. My job is done, right? If you want to select the specific text, as you would have seen, we can select this individual text. In case you want to have the complete data, all you have to do is just click a rectangular box out of it, right? The method is by default set to OCR. I'll keep it to the default setting as of now. If I go to the properties, you would notice that the result, the output is something which is called a string, right? It is in a form of string. So I just go here and I hit Control plus K and I just say str underscore output. Okay, so whatever output the CV text is giving, I am going to store that in a variable which is called the CV output. Now once it is extracted, what do we want to do? So let's say we simply want to show the data in a message box, right? It can be any automation. You can write this data to an email, you can write this data to some other application, you can convert this data, anything is possible, right? But for us, we just say we want to show the data in a message box. I'll save this automation, right? This is the place. I'll go here and I simply say run the file. Okay, so the automation has started. Now the robot would be executing and you would notice that it will actually go hit the remote desktop with the help of the CV and try to extract this output and show the output in a message box. Okay, we'll just wait for the automation to complete, and you can see the automation is completed and I am able to get the data in the message box. Okay, I have kept both the things side by side. So you could notice that the text is starting with e-commerce company and is ending with eBay, INC and other, right? So CV get text activity was actually able to extract this complete text out of the remote desktop using a single activity. In this example, I was able to select the complete text. But now let's say I have a situation where I have to get a specific text. For example, I have opened this calculator in front of me and I have done some calculation, and now the automation requires us to get the result, right? We just want to read this particular text which is 56, right? We can do all of this click with the help of CV click activity. But now let's say once we are done, we want to get this output, right? So again, we can actually go and use the same activity which is called the CV get text. Drag and drop it here. Now as soon as I click on indicate on scope, right, and you would say that it is showing me that old scope only, right? Because we have not informed UiPath that we are working on a new scope, right? So how do I update a scope? If you see here, it is telling me that application scope has changed. Do you want to update the detection? I say yes, update the detection. And now what would happen? It is actually getting the all the elements from the calculator, right? So I simply point it to this grid like this, and you would see that UiPath automatically created an anchor from the help one, right? We have covered the anchor in the first video in details. You can refer that. Once this text is extracted, I simply want to go to properties, store this result in a variable. I call this variable as str underscore Kelsey. Okay, save this automation, and once this output is available, I simply want to use a message box activity, and in the message box I want to use the string calci, right? Now if you have noticed, I am doing automation in two different screen, and I am only using one CV screen scope, right? So this is the new caching strategy with UiPath has implemented, covered in detail in the previous video, but you can see here, right? Both the screens are cached in the same CV scope, right? Now to test this output box, let me quickly go here. I'll comment this activity because the I is in the minimized mode as of now here, so it won't work. I'll just comment this as well, right? But the CV scope has already got, if you notice here, the CV scope has already got the calculator available here, right? So now if I simply go and run this automation in my message box, I should be able to get the number which is available on the screen. Okay, so I go here and I say run the file. Okay, we'll just wait for the automation to fire up. So this time we have used a single element from the remote desktop. Okay, we'll just wait for the automation to complete, and you could see that I was able to get 56 in the message box. I'll hit OK and the automation is completed. Now let's say, let me go back to the VDI and I just do some different calculation and I get a different number. Now if I simply go to my automation and I say run the file. Okay, last time UiPath was able to read the single element which was 56 from the VDI. Now the text has updated. Now the idea is we wanted to see if my UiPath get text activity is able to identify the change or not, right? So as you can see, this is now getting 18,000. So that means that without changing my code, my CV get text activity was able to read the different values. This can be used in scenarios where you want to get a ticket number, you want to get any reference, you want to get any email ID, anything which is changing in the remote desktop, you can use this technology. Okay, so that was about getting the text out of the CV, a single element and the complete text. Now that we have seen the get text activity, let's have a quick look at the properties which are available. So first of all, CV get text is used to extract the text from a specified UI element. The drop down menus enable you to select the different methods to retrieve the target text. Okay, so if you would have seen in the CV get text, there was a drop down, right? By default, the drop down was selected to OCR, but we have two more options, which is called the select all and the select row. So for example, if you have some text, for example, in a notepad, in a text file, in a document, which you simply want to copy and paste, such as a Control C and a Control V, instead of the OCR, you can actually go and use this option, which is called the select all. How does a select all will work? It will exactly the work you work in a Control C and a Control V manner. The other option which is available is called the select row. What does it mean? Copy the text in the entire row by using the clipboard, right? We are not this time selecting the entire data, but we are just selecting the single row, right? So based on your requirement, you can change this input methods and update accordingly. There is one other important property which is called a refresh before, which means that before the CV screen analysis is being carried out, do you want to do a refresh or not? By default, this value is checked, which means that it refresh the CV scope so that you are getting the latest data. If we do not want to refresh, we can simply uncheck this box. Okay, back into my UiPath. If I go to the CV text and if you click on the properties, you would see here the method, it is called the OCR. If I select the select all text, it will select all the text from the VDI. That is just like doing a Control C and a Control V. You can change it to select text row. Select text row is used by selecting the active row using the copy keyboard, right? But for this option, the client and the remote machine must have the shared keyboard. Based on your requirement, you are free to use this one, right? The next thing was the refresh before. By default, this property is true. If I do not want to refresh, I can simply toggle this to false, like this, right? Result is stored in a string variable by default, right? So whatever data the text is giving, it will be stored in a output variable of type string, right? So that is why it is creating as a string variable, right? If you see here, strcalc, str output, both of them were the string variables. Coming back to the presentation, now I hope you understand the get text output. So let's move forward. The next activity which is available is called the extract tabular data. As the name suggests, whenever I have a data which is in a form of table, when I say table, it is having rows and it is having columns. So output of such thing would not be a string. Output of such thing would be a data table. So before we come to the presentation, let us quickly see how exactly we can do the same in UiPath. Okay. I'll go back to my VD and this time I have opened a browser. In the browser, I have some data which is in a tabular format. So for example, I have a requirement where we need to extract all of this data, and let's say we want to write this data in an Excel sheet. Okay, so the requirement is simple. We want to extract all this data and store it in a Excel sheet. If I am not using the computer vision, the other option is to use the get text, the OCR, right? But that will give me the data in the form of text, and then we would have to write a separate logic to convert the data from text to a data table and then write it to an Excel, right? That is a long process. Let us see the quick one. So if I go back to my UiPath again, in my activities, I just type here extract. So you would see that I have something which is called CV extract table, which is inside the computer vision, right? So this, all of this now we can get rid of, right? We don't want this, we don't want this, but all I want is the CV screen scope, right? It has already cached one screen, but we do not worry about that because of the new caching strategy, right? So I just drag and drop something which is called CV extract table. Now it is saying me indicate the table on the scope. Click on it, go back to the VD, and it is still showing me the old one, right? So do you want to update? Yes, I want to update it. That's it, right? Now it is showing me where all the table is located, right? See, it is not showing anything here. As soon as I hover it here, it is able to recognize the table. So all I have to do is just click on it. That's it, right? All you have to do is just go to the VD and click on it. As soon as you click on it, what would happen? The first thing, it will automatically create the screen in the caching. In the property, as of now, we just worry about the output. So the output is a data table. So I go here, I hit Control plus K, and I create a variable which is called dt underscore data, right? Properties we are going to look in a little bit moment, right? So I have a VD which is having some tabular data. I use a CV extract table activity, store the data in a variable which is called dt data, right? Now to write the data back to an Excel, we require an activity which is called write range. Write range. Okay, I'm going to use the workbook write range. In case you are new to Excel automation and you don't understand all of this activity, I have a dedicated full-fledged playlist which is complete automation of Excel. I'll provide the link in the description for your reference. Okay. Now let's say whatever output I get from this one, I want to store that output in a file which is called, let's say, data file.xlsx. Okay. And we want to save the data in the sheet 1, and the data table is nothing but the same data table which we get from the extract table, right? extracting the data and putting the same data into the right range. I'll add headers, save this, and in the project folder, as of now, there is no data file. So if I run this automation, what should happen? My robot should extract this table and store this information in an Excel file. I go here and I simply say run the file. Okay, so now we'll just wait for the robot to fire up. The robot has started the execution. Execution is completed. I see no errors. Let me go to the project. I'll hit a refresh and I could see a data file is available. Let me just quickly go and double click the data file and see what data the robot has extracted, right? This time we are expecting the data to be in a tabular format. Okay, so we'll just wait for the Excel to open. Yes, and let me just do it like this, and let me pull up my VDI as well. Now if you notice, whatever data was visible on the screen which was in a tabular format, UiPath CV extract scope activity was actually able to give me the same thing as it is in a tabular format, right? Now because of this activity, I do not have to write any other piece of automation, right? So this is absolutely an awesome activity. If I do not have this activity, we need to get this data in a string, then we do a string manipulation and all those things, right? But with the help of this activity, without writing any piece of code, we are actually able to extract the tabular data from a virtual machine, right? How cool is that? Coming back to my presentation, CV extract data. It is used to extract the table which is visible on the screen. This part is important, which is visible on the screen. Unlike the data scraping, it is not going to extract everything. It is only going to extract the data which is visible on the screen. Now, what does that mean? If you go back to the Excel, you would see that the last item was adjacent close, right? But in the VDI, if you notice that there are other column, there was a column which was called volume. But since in my VD only this part was visible, right? See, only this was visible, so this is extracted. The robot did not extracted the volume, right? So this is an important point to remember, that the extract table only extract the data which is visible on the screen, right? There are some other properties which are available. The first one is the add headers, which simply means if selected, the first row of the data is added as the column header. If we want to clear it, the table is created with the generic header name. The other property which is available is called the ignore empty rows, which simply means that if I select this one and the extraction has empty rows in it, the final data would have the empty rows deleted. By default, this checkbox is cleared. In case you have a situation where you want to delete the empty rows, just tick on this checkbox. The last one, which is called the refresh before, which simply means that do I want to do a refresh before the analysis is made, and this property is available in the UiPath. Let me go back to my UiPath Studio. I click on the CV text. If you go to the properties, these options are available here in the options category: add headers, ignore empty rows, and the refresh before. All of them are a boolean variable, which means that we can always toggle them by clicking on this one as true, false, like this. Let's quickly summarize. Today we have seen that how we can read a data from a virtual machine with the help of the computer vision activities. We have seen the two options. The first option was to just to extract the text. In the second option, we tried to read the data in a tabular format, and with the help of the activities, we were able to do that. So that is all for this video. I would like to wrap this video here. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please do subscribe to the channel, and happy automation.